So today we're going to talk about analytics audits and basically all of the things that I've learned from my other clients, what not to do with your analytics if you want to be able to use it for analysis on a day-to-day basis and get good data from it. So just before we kick off, I want to say that, I know obviously there's lots of different types of data and different types of, analytics programs. So today we're going to be talking specifically about Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. So web data, since it is Drupal. So cleaning up your data mess, or as this wouldn't fit on my first slide and have room for the date and also the Drupal GovCon, is how we're going to be learning from the mistakes of my clients so you don't do the same thing. So I have some, I'm not going to be naming names here, but I do have a bunch of real examples of issues I've seen from doing lots of these audits. So you might recognize yourself in here, just kidding. So I'm going to take a second to introduce myself because I do have my own company. It's called BeMeasure. So it's me and a couple of contractors, and basically I do this for a living. A lot of analytics audits and implementation work. So setting up Google Tag Manager for different clients. Nonprofit, I focus on nonprofit and government, helping them use their Google Analytics data and build dashboards, create reports, that sort of thing. So from beginning to end, everything you might need help with Google Analytics. So if you have any questions about this presentation or Google Analytics in general, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always happy to help if it's something quick, and if it's something not so quick, maybe we can talk about that too. So here's my Twitter handle and my email. All right, enough about me. All right, so what are we covering today? I'm gonna do about a half-hour presentation and then leave 10 or 15 minutes for questions at the end. So if you want any thoughts or advice on what you should do with your own agency or organization, just definitely put it in the chat. If you think of something as we go along, feel free to type it in the chat and I will answer it at the end. However, I'm gonna just kind of plow through this and kind of not take questions as we go along, just like a regular in-person presentation. So first off, we're going to talk about what's an analytics audit anyway. I realized in creating this presentation and the title is that this might not be a concept that is familiar to you, and wasn't necessarily familiar to me until I started doing it. So I'm going to talk a second about what it is that I do and look at to have created this whole thing in the first place. And then we're going to talk about the 3 big mistakes. It's really hard to narrow it down to 3, honestly, that I've seen clients make in their analytics that just really causes a lot of problems. And basically some advice I have for fixing these issues so that you don't run into the same situation. So mistake number 1 is dirty data, don't care. So basically not caring about your data cleanliness and why that's important and what are some things you should do to fix those issues. Mistake number 2 is more is more. So I know there's a lot of, we live in a world where more data is better. If you can track it, go ahead and track it, create all of these accounts. We kind of have unlimited space and it's all free until it isn't. So thinking that, creating lots of stuff with no necessary plan, that's another huge mistake really that I see people make, maybe the biggest one out of these 3. And then number 3 is giving it to the intern. So this is going to be a section where I'll talk about kind of the people and process side of analytics and why it's important to really think that through ahead of time and really treat it as an important part of your website and not just like an extra kind of cool to have thing that you can just pawn off on your summer intern. So I'm going to talk about these 3 things and some tips I have on how to address them. All right, so let's get started with what's an analytics audit anyway. So like I said, I left a full-time job at working on the analytics team at PBS, the TV station, public broadcasting, up in Arlington, Arlington, Virginia, and I went out on my own to launch my own business, focusing on stuff I had been doing in-house, and doing it now for my own company. And a lot of the requests I kept getting were for, hey, can you just come in and look at my analytics and see if everything is set up correctly? So I've gotten so many of these that I've kind of put together a standard package that I offer places. And I look at basically these kind of 5 things at a bigger, these are kind of at a high level. So I help places figure out, like, are they using, this is a pretty basic one, are they using all of Google Analytics features that are available? So Google Analytics has a lot of stuff that comes out of the box, I call it in my trainings. But it has to be just sort of switched on. And it's fairly easy to set up, definitely even if you aren't super familiar with the platform, but it does have to be turned on. So I go through clients' accounts and make sure that everything there is turned on for them and they're making full use out of their account. Another thing that I take a look at is whether their data is clean and easy to use. I actually have a whole section in this presentation about this, so we'll dive into that more later. But I think that making sure your data is clean and everything is set up in a way that's like simple and accessible, encourages people, especially people maybe in other branches of your organization that aren't like super into web analytics, to want to use Google Analytics and get trained on it if it doesn't feel so like messy and overwhelming. The third thing I typically look at in these audits is whether organizations are collecting the data that they say they need and whether that data is accurate. So I'll typically meet with, often I work with, the digital director or the marketing director, communications director, and talk to them about, what are their priorities as an organization? Are they, trying to encourage people to, use their research that they're promoting? Are they trying to, get people to apply for grants or register for, a certain program online? It really depends from client to client, but it's important that their analytics is set up in a way that makes sure that they're getting the, information that is most important to their organization, whether people are actually registering for their program that they're providing. And it's also important that they can confirm that this data is actually accurate. So I will help them on both of these fronts. And then the last 2 things, eliminating out of date or unused data. Like I said before, I think our tendency is just to kind of create things and then never want to delete them. I find in a lot of these audits that clients have accounts that they've created that never collected a single data point, but they're just so hesitant to delete them because they're worried that, what if we lose something? And I kind of feel like you are losing something by keeping all of this stuff around that you're not using. I know that we all read the KonMari Japanese tidying up book a couple of years ago and kind of learned that, yeah, in hoarding things and not feeling like we can let go of things, there is, something lost there. Like every time we go into analytics and you feel like, oh, there's tons of stuff in here and I don't know what it is, it's kind of stressful and overwhelming. And then the last thing I look at that we won't really talk about today, but is that whether the teams I work with have all the training that they need, or is this an issue of we have the data, we just don't know how to use it and we don't know what it means. So that's another thing I look at. So, that's useful from a high level. What does an analytics audit mean in practice? This is actually I have I have spreadsheets that I use. So I basically have a checklist that I just go down and check all of these things and make notes about them. Then I put it together in a report for clients. So, all right, so the meaty content here. The first mistake I see, and I see this from a lot of people, but I wanted to start with this one because I think it's one that's pretty easy to fix. This is not something that is going to, involve maybe lots of buy-in and stress from your organization. This is something that, you could possibly fix in, a couple of hours. So mistake number one is not caring about your data quality. So I'm going to tell a story here that has to do with camping, but I swear it's related. So I love to go camping. I love the outdoors. I live down in Charlottesville, Virginia, so I do a lot of hiking and things. And previously, my husband and I had all this camping gear, and we would keep it in the basement of our house. And every time we wanted to go camping, it was kind of a huge hassle. We'd have to, we go down there, we pack up what we thought we needed. I think, maybe we had a spreadsheet at some point, because you can probably tell I have a lot of spreadsheets. And we would, pack up our tent and our sleeping bag and blah, blah, blah. And inevitably, when we would get to the campsite, we would find that we had left something at home. One time in particular, we actually left the tent poles at home and had to construct a tent by using sticks from a tree. Anyway, the problem here and how this relates to dirty data is that if your stuff is in such a mess, it makes it a lot more time consuming and more of a hassle and a stress anytime that you want to use it. So, making packing for camping such a headache made me never want to go camping, because I would always be worried that, we were going to forget something, and I'd have to set aside a lot of time to make sure I went through everything and got it all. So that, that made me not inclined to want to plan any camping trips. Eventually, we ended up buying these big rubber containers from Lowe's and putting all the camping gear in there, so that now it's super easy when we want to go camping. We just take the tubs and put them in the car, and that is the end of it. So I think you want to take a similar approach when it comes to your data, that you don't want it to be so messy and so complicated that anytime you want to use it, it's like us packing for a camping trip. It's like a whole ordeal to figure out, what do you have? What do I need to do? What are my next steps here? And kind of always in the back of your mind, worried about whether you got everything and did it correctly. So there's definitely a few things that you can do to your analytics account to make it just so much easier. So when you want to go and analyze your data, it's not like a whole giant process like it used to be when we were packing for our camping trips. So what do I mean when I say messy data in Google Analytics? And what do I mean when I say that messy data makes analyzing your data or using your Google Analytics more complicated? Well, I have a couple of anonymized screenshots here, but one of the things that can be super messy is if you use query parameters on your URLs. This is quite common with websites of any kind. I have a government client right now that has a lot of query parameters, and if you don't tell Google Analytics to filter them out, they show up on your in your page review report. So if you want to get basic stats on how many visitors came to news and events, news releases, COVID-19 response latest updates, so your COVID-19 response press release that you put out there, is actually super complicated, because you now need to search in analytics for every instance of this URL and then add them together. It's just adding this extra step that's super annoying and doesn't make you want to, pull stats on a regular basis to look at what pages are popular. This is another example of dirty data. I find this screenshot kind of funny because I used to do a training on the same issue when I worked at PBS, and I used this word cloud that I created for my training. And the thing is, I've been doing this now ever since, and it's still as valid as ever. Like, this is from obviously 2014 when Downton Abbey was still on the air. But this is still a thing that I see organizations do, unfortunately. And it's especially common when you have a bunch of people who are pushing out, they have emails, they have social media campaigns, your marketing team, and they're all pushing out information about, a specific program or initiative that you're running through, like I said, through marketing channels. And, they're tagging that outreach with a campaign URL. And if you have any questions about those, you can ask me at the end. And when it's coming back to the site, it's getting tracked, but it's all getting tracked in different ways because like every person who's doing it is doing something different. They haven't all gotten on the same page about what to call Downton Abbey in this case. And every time I would go to pull the report on how much traffic PBS was getting about Downton Abbey, I would have to add all of these things together. So it was similar to the page view report in the previous slide. If I wanted to just get a total overview of how many people came from these campaigns, I'd have to go through Google Analytics and find everything tagged with Downton Abbey and then add them all together. And it just made what could be a super easy report take way more time. So it became hard then to provide regular reporting to the teams who are doing this promotion. And the last one is, of course, very similar. Another quirky thing about Google Analytics, of many quirky things, is that that it's case sensitive. So in this case, with these search results, Google doesn't know that panda with a capital P and panda with a lowercase p are the exact same thing. So anytime, again, if you wanted to know how many people are searching for panda or face masks or anything, you have to go ahead and search and then add these together. So it just adds in an extra step there when you're analyzing your search data. So this is from on-site searches, like your search bar. So what do you do about this? Fortunately, all of these things, actually, except for the screenshot with Downton Abbey, where it's the marketing data, are very easy to solve. Google Analytics allows you to clean up your data using some features in the admin section of Google Analytics. So they're here under View Settings and Filters, and you can use the options in here to block spam, exclude those query parameters, so those URLs with all that data at the end. You can, you figure out what is the parameter, so kind of like the connecting piece there, and you can list these in Google Analytics, and it will just strip them off your URLs before you even gets in your account. And then in the filter section, you can do stuff like block your IP address, you and your coworkers' IP addresses, so you're not getting tracked in your traffic. And you can also make everything lowercase. So I recommend making your search term. So when you're tracking your searches on the site, when you're any URLs or marketing data, make sure that that is all lowercase so you don't run into an issue like we're seeing here with the pandas. Cool. All right. And just a word of caution, I have this in all my trainings, is to be, when you're doing this, so if you see this presentation and you're like, oh, this is awesome, I'm gonna do this. Just be very careful, because anything you do here in this admin section of Google Analytics, it affects the data before it gets into your analytics account. So if you accidentally make everything uppercase instead of lowercase, and then you go away for a week and you come back and all your stuff is uppercase and you're like, uh-oh, shoot, I want to just undo that. Unfortunately, there is no undo in admin, and there is no time machine, so you can't go back in time and fix that data. So just be very careful, and actually I recommend creating a testing test view in Google Analytics so that you can maybe try this out before you make it live, just to make sure. Because I know if you're having to report on the site up to your, boss, you want to make sure that you're not having to explain like why the data looks crazy for this one particular month. All right, number 2 is thinking that more is more. All right, so a lot of clients, and I think a lot of organizations in general, have this approach to Google Analytics. They're like, oh, Google Analytics, that's great. We can track our website. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, well, the people from, oh, well, we started this new YouTube channel, and there's a field in YouTube where you can create, you can track your YouTube views. So we're going to create another account or property to track that, because maybe that'll be helpful. Oh, and then the intranet team, they found out that we had Google Analytics on the main site. So we're going to like create another account and put another tracking code on the intranet. This is apparently the McDonald's intranet. And then, oh, okay, we have our own we have a conference site, so we're going to make another thing and put Google Analytics on there. Oh, and then we had we made a special site for COVID-19 stuff, so we're going to create yet another property or account and put analytics on the COVID-19 site. So here we have like 5 different analytics properties, and they're all tracking this stuff and they're all doing it separately, but like that's cool, right? I would say that definitely this approach is definitely not what you want to do. I know organizations, you have often have a lot of different sites and a lot of different initiatives and different teams, and of course everyone wants access to data, but it's really important to think about how to do this scalably before you just start creating new accounts all the time, as it'll become very unwieldy to manage very quickly. So here is what Google Analytics recommends you set up for your account. So basically, in an ideal world, I realize this is not possible for everybody, but that you create one account for one organization. So your government agency or your nonprofit should have one account. And then underneath that, each website or app should have its own quote unquote property. So when I say property, I mean pretty much website. So here's like an example. You have 2 separate websites, and you have an app, and you have a staging site. So you would have one account with 4 properties underneath it. So how this might work for, this one of my clients, they're a healthcare nonprofit, and they have a main website, and then they have 2 websites that have different audiences. One is really for patients who have the condition, and the other one is for researchers who are researching that condition. And because these are on separate domains and have separate distinct audiences, I set them up as separate properties. However, I find like in an ideal world, this would be awesome if everyone set their analytics up to look like this. But in reality, when I end up doing a lot of audits, I find instead that this is like what a lot of people's analytics look like. You have your organization, and then every time there was something new, the place created a new property. So why is this a problem exactly? Besides the fact that it's just like kind of confusing, it's a problem because it's a lot harder to manage if you, these all have separate tracking IDs, so that the analytics is tracking separately. So if you did something to the main website, you're like, oh, we need to track clicks on this button. And then you're like, oh, wait, okay, so we set that up. oh wait, well, there's actually that button is now also on the job application platform, and it's on our special COVID subdomain. So oops, now we need to set that tracking up for these other sites too, since they're all separate. Okay. And so if you're a small web team where, there's like, a couple of you all and your main focus is on, creating content and managing the site, you don't necessarily want to create like a whole bunch of extra work for yourself by creating a ton of properties. The other big thing that why this doesn't work is, like I said, these are separate ID numbers. So Google Analytics thinks of them as separate websites, whether they are or not. So if somebody lands on the main website and then goes to your COVID subdomain and then goes to your other special report subdomain, each time it's going to a different property, Google Analytics thinks it's a new visit. So you're actually getting 3 visits to what is essentially actually one site. And if you want to do some reporting at the end of the month and say how many visits, total users or total visits you had overall, you're not going to be able to get accurate numbers because you're kind of like double counting visits to your site. Cool. So my cleanup tip here is really to just combine as much as possible. I know this is hard once you already created this stuff, but I really try to encourage people to lay down the law with your program teams, your conference teams, or whatever, and just say like, we really need to roll this into the main website, the main container, and not be creating new things all the time because it just becomes too much to manage, and it also makes it harder to get accurate numbers. So try and combine as much as possible. And here's my kind of tips that I give people. Keep everything on the same domain, or at least a subdomain of the domain, and try and keep those together in one property, because ultimately it's easier to separate things than it is to add them together. Like if you need to filter out to see just the conference web data, like that's very easy to do. What is not easy to do is to take the conference and add it to the main site if they were created separately. And I also say if something is for the same audience, I really try and keep it together. If it's for different audiences, like for the example where there was a patient site and a researcher site, it's okay to make those separate properties because we're not seeing the same people go to those properties. There's not going to be much movement in between the two. So try and combine as much as possible. And I realize I teased this in my talk, or in my description for this talk, so I wanted to throw it in here. It's also a question I get a lot, is I'm creating a new, like we're revamping our website, or we're launching a new website to replace a website that already exists. Do I start a new Google Analytics account or property? No, do not set up a new Google Analytics property for your new website. You just want to reuse what you already have. So if you have a property for your main site, you want to keep that same ID number, and when the site goes live, you can move the ID number, the tracking ID from your old site to your new site. That way you are not creating more stuff. Also, you're able to see then year over year how your stats have changed. Like, is your new site helping you getting more traffic? Is it getting people to sign up for the program or whatever? If you create a new account, every time you want to do that, it's going to be a big headache. So use the same Google Analytics ID number. You also probably want to create a property actually for your staging site. That way you can set up everything in advance and kind of push this live when the site goes live. I'm running out of time, so we won't go into that. Maybe another time. And then mistake number 3, which I'm going to spend the last like 5 minutes here on, is giving it to the intern. So I see this a lot, not so much anymore, but especially when I first started this, is that, marketing or digital teams, so maybe someone would get on them, the boss, about, we need analytics, what's the data? Are we tracking how many people are registering or how many people are using our content? And, the person, maybe would think like, I am really a writer first, or, you know, a designer first, I really don't want to deal with this. Let's give analytics responsibility either to the intern or perhaps like the coordinator who is right out of college and like very eager to dive into this, but also maybe only likely to stay with the organization for like a year or two. So analytics became something like kind of easy to silo and sort of pawn off on a junior staff member, and not something that you necessarily gave a lot of thought to. So I have to say that this is, you know, this sort of attitude of, you know, sort of like not really thinking about analytics and, you know, kind of giving it away has caused a lot of, I would say, analytics mysteries in my audits. So I have to say that I, in normal life, outside of work, am a huge mystery fan. This is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I'm really into all of those like British grandma mysteries. As I said before, I used to work at PBS on the PBS programming. So it was just like all PBS English mysteries all the time. And it was great. So I'm normally a mystery lover, but I have to say, when it comes to analytics mysteries are bad mysteries. Actually, as I was working on this presentation earlier this week, I got sidelined because I had my own analytics mystery from an analytics, it was like an implementation that I was working on. It's like I then had to spend 2 hours trying to figure out why some tags I launched weren't firing on the live site, and it was because there was another Google Analytics ID number stored in Tag Manager. Sorry, this is maybe too much detail, and it's just like it's something so weird that you would never do. I just spent a bunch of time then trying to get to the bottom of why this is happening, and is this causing any other problems on the site that I need to be aware of. So, you know, as much fun as mysteries can be when they're like cheesy British mysteries on PBS, when it comes to analytics, you don't want any mysteries because they are time consuming, they can lead to bad data, they are frustrating, so not something you want. So here's my cleanup tips for this section is I'm going to share with you a couple of my analytics mystery solving tools that I use. So not all is lost if you have analytics mysteries in your life. There is some ways to get to the bottom of them. Number one, and I totally was using this yesterday with my analytics mystery that I had, is the real-time report for in Google Analytics. So if you're familiar with Google Analytics, it's, you know, one of your standard sections over here in the left sidebar. It's basically looking at people who are on your site at this very moment. And this can be very useful if you're, you know, seeing data in your account and you're like, what is this? I have no idea what these events are, or like why this is, like what is causing this. So you're able to go to another window and go to another tab, load up the site, click around, and you'll be able to see yourself using the site in real time. So it's helpful, yeah, if you're seeing events, so like any sort of tracking that's not a page view that you custom set up, firing, you'll be able to kind of get to the bottom of like, what are these events tracking? What are they, when are they firing? Are they firing every time I click on a navigation item? How exactly is that working? So typically, because I live in Charlottesville, honestly, and I work with a lot of clients in New York and DC, I normally come here and I go to the location section and I find the user in Charlottesville. There's usually only one, it's me. And then I'm able to click on myself, like right here, and I'm able to see specifically how I navigate the site. So that little like workaround won't work if you live in DC and there's lots of other users in your location on there. And to get around that, you can always create another view in here that is filtered for just your IP address. If you want to do a lot of this sort of testing to be able to see like what's firing on the site and when. So I'd recommend. The other thing, other little cheat here that I use a lot to solve my analytics mysteries, this This site is someone I work with actually for teaching classes on analytics, and he was curious, like, did I install Google Tag Manager? I'm not sure. And I was like, I will look that up for you. It will take only 1 second. I have a Chrome extension called Google Tag Assistant. Basically, if you turn it on and then reload the site, it will tell you what tags are installed on the site. So this is very helpful for figuring out, like, oh, do we even have Google Tag Manager installed? What Google Analytics account is running on our site? Do we have duplicate things running on there? Sometimes people have Google Tag Manager or Analytics installed twice, and this will tell you. So it's very handy for solving some of those like bigger, broader issues, mysteries. And then kind of the last thing I think is in this presentation, I know I promised time for questions, is my recommendation that you create your account, your Google Analytics account, with a generic email address. I've definitely encountered quote unquote Google Analytics mysteries where the mystery was someone created the account with their personal Gmail and then left the organization, or a digital agency was hired to build the account. They created the account under their agency name, and then the organization no longer works with this agency anymore. So I had to play, detective and track down these former employees or former agency people and get them to transfer ownership of the analytics account so that you're able to, there's a few functions that are only accessible if you're the owner of if you have access at the account level. Anyway, so to avoid this situation, I have been really pushing all of my clients to make sure that when you create the account, you use a generic Gmail or Google address, something like, my organization's analytics at gmail.com, and then use that to give staff and vendors access. Don't let one of your staff members create this and own it, so that you're going to run into this problem if this person is maybe fired or whatever, or moves to another country and you can't find them. All right, and then the last thing here is to avoid analytics mysteries. Treat Google Analytics like you would any other web project, and be sure to always document your changes. Google has this snazzy little tool in here. It's right underneath your basic report. It's on any report, and it's right underneath those line graphs that you always see. And you can add comments in here, just saying like what happened on a particular day. And this is just really handy for going forward, when you're looking back the next year and you're like, why is traffic totally different starting September 23rd? It will give you some insight into what happened. Same deal with Tag Manager. They also have a easy to use platform here where you can detail what exactly you've done. So I recommend, Google makes it easy for you, so I recommend actually using those things so that you're not running into these same issues that I've had. All right, so let's see, that's everything I have for today. Oh, I thought I had a summary slide, but it's cool because I know we are running out of time and I wanted to leave at least a couple minutes for questions here. So, okay, so I had a couple of, let's see, there's a couple of questions, just opening the search bar. Someone asked, how do you link your search bar searches so that they show up in Google Analytics? So that is another feature that's in the admin section of Google Analytics. So back here, right? It is, I believe it's under view settings, but you can also Google it. Because, there's a section in there where it's asks you have to turn it on, and it's called on-site search tracking. You turn it on, and then you need to pick out your query parameter, for your searches. So, just perform a search on your site. You'll see like the URL will say, blah, 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 question mark, S equals webinar, if you searched for webinar. Or it might say like search or query or something like that. So just grab that and put that into the field. All right, and let's see. So the next question is, those timeline notifications get included in applicable reports automatically? I'm guessing you mean the things at the end where people can, all right, where people can add comments into Google Analytics. And unfortunately, yeah, they just sort of live on your account. Like you'll just see a little like note flag show up here. So unless you're looking for them, you know that they exist. They're actually a little hard to see. I do feel like Google could improve this feature a little bit more, but yeah, they just kind of fold here. All right. Then another question: can you change the name of the email, the account at any point? We need to change the email to another one, but we don't want to lose anything. We send out monthly reports that come from that email, and we want to change it. So I don't think you can change it. So you could add a new email and take that one off. And then I'm assuming you're talking about custom reports in Google Analytics. So to do that, you'll have to, I think, I've never done this particular thing, but here's what I would do. I would go into the original email, and you can generate a share link, and you can share that with the new email address you want to migrate everything to, and have somebody, you apply that to that email's account, then reconfigure those emails being sent out every month or so. So definitely a little tedious. I don't think you can just edit the email address in Google Analytics. You'll have to like add the new one and then transfer things to the new person. Cool. All right. Next question. Let's see. So from Chris, if you have already created a bunch of website properties, how do you then move them into a single account and have all properties under a single account? And does doing this allow for aggregated stats? So, okay, so accounts and properties are different things. So if you want to transfer a property right, an account is supposed to be in an organization. So if, say, you have an agency that created the property and you want to transfer it to your, like a digital, like, okay, a website design agency created this property, and now your government agency wants to take ownership of this property. I don't remember how to do this off the top of my head, but if you Google it, there's definitely like a way, if you both get on the phone, you can just transfer it, and then you can grab it and you can just like move the property to your account. But if you are like this slide where you have a ton of different properties, it's right under your organization's account, and you want to combine them, fortunately that's a little more complicated. You'll have to actually, like if you want to put your special COVID subdomain into your main website, you'll have to, I'm assuming you have Tag Manager on here, either install your Tag Manager, your main website's Tag Manager container on this COVID subdomain so that you're running the same tracking ID number across the COVID subdomain and the main website. That will do it. That means that all of the data from before you made the transfer will live in forever in the special COVID subdomain property. You won't be able to move this historical data to the main website. So it's definitely something to not do on a whim, because if you're doing a lot of reporting, it's going to be annoying if you want to compare October to September. Now, like, your data is split in two different places. So it's definitely something I actually often don't recommend people move things or properties around because of that reason. just, to something to think about ahead of time, and try not to create new ones. That said, if this is like really a big pain for you and you're running out of ones maybe that are available, you definitely could move that, but you will end up with the old data forever in the old property. Hopefully that answers that. Awesome. All right, anything else? Happy to answer one more question, but we're also at time, and I know that people probably want to get a coffee and go to their next presentation. Cool. Oh, okay. Cool. All right. HTTP to HTTPS, that shouldn't duplicate any data. Usually you'll just see HTTP redirect automatically to HTTPS, and it will just, if something redirects to another URL, you're only ever going to get data for the destination URL. So it will work for any redirects, HTTPS, but also like if you have a vanity URL, like, my org/sign up, and it redirects to like, sign up for blah, blah, blah program that's longer. Google Analytics won't actually track that original URL. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, if you have any questions, it's Emily@bmeasure.com. So I'm around and I'm happy to help. It was great meeting you all.